DatexII webinar. My name is Marjolein Masclee. I'm the chair of the DatexII steering group. I'm doing this presentation together with Bart Vries, who's the chair of the DatexII technical management group. The original planning was to be in Paris today for our biannual DatexII forum. As soon as it became clear that a physical forum today was not feasible, we decided to shift the event to 2021 and to organize a series of webinars as a kind of appetizers leading to the physical DatexII forum on the 9th and 10th of June 2021 in Paris. So today, there is no Eiffel Tower behind me, but the screens of the dispatch room of the Dutch National Traffic Management Center. And for those who are wondering if we are complying with the Dutch corona rules, yes, we are. We keep our distance, we don't have to wear a mouth cap, and directly after this webinar, we will go straight home. We will continue working at home for the next month, just as we did in the past 8 months. This series of webinars, as well as the physical forum in Paris, is kindly hosted by our French partner Cerema. Cerema is a public research and knowledge institute on risk, environment, mobility and land planning. And I would like to thank Cerema so much for their willingness to host these events. I would like to introduce to you Mr. Pascal Berthaud, who is the Director General of Cerema and who will welcome today's attendance. Mr. Berthaud has filmed his opening speech, so we will switch to the film now to hear Cerema's view on DatexII.
I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar. France has hosted the first forum DATEX in 2000 in Paris, and Cerema is proud to launch this webinar series and invite you for physical the DatexII user forum next June 2021 in Paris. Such our experts have contributed to road information publication on the National Access Point launch in 2015 using DatexII. Cerema is a member of many European projects implementing DatexII Exchange since 2009, and moreover than 10 projects from Compass 40 to CE Roads, Phoenix, and Indeed. As DatexII is a key standard for the ITS directive, Cerema provides local players with support in terms of engineering and technical expertise in open data publications for mobility. So you've understood that DatEX is very important for us, and I wish you a good job in this webinar and hope to see you, of course, physically speaking, in June 2021 in Paris. Thank you.
Thanks again to Pascal Berthaud and Cerema for opening today's webinar and for hosting the events. I'm really excited to see that for today's webinar, over 300 people registered. And of course, a webinar is easily accessible, especially as compared to a physical event for which one has to travel. But it also means that the hard work on the development and the improvement of our standard pays off, that we are indeed on the right track. We are, as we mentioned in the theme of our webinars, at the heart of connectivity. Let me explain this. The scope of DatexII has grown from information exchange between traffic centers to exchange with service providers and many other types of actors in the ITS value chain. Also, information communication technologies and functionalities are developing rapidly. New requirements arise from new technological developments like CITS and CCAM and the type of information that needs to be exchanged. In addition, there are many domains outside of the National Road Authority domain that are related to DatexII. Like these domains move further away from the interest and the decision power of the national road authorities, but need to be supported by the DatexII organization as well. We will highlight some of these domains later in this presentation. First, I would like to look back at our DatexII Forum 2018, which we organized in Utrecht. This was a highly interactive forum, and we ended the forum with the so-called Declaration of Utrecht. This declaration contains the concluding statement of the 2018 forum about how DATEX II should evolve in the next years. We are now 2 years on, so it's a good time to look back and see what has become of the declaration so far. Now I would like to point out 3 elements of this declaration: information exchange, stakeholders and outreach, and user support. So I'd like to start with information exchange. To achieve interoperability and continuity of information services, a standardized information exchange is needed. To this end, we developed version 3.1 of the standard, and for the ease of use, we have created the concept of reference profiles. Member states can use these reference profiles to fulfill the requirements of the delegated regulations of the ITS directive. Bart, could you explain us a little bit more about these profiles?
Yes, thank you, Marjolein. DATEX II is growing. It's growing rapidly in scope, both in terms of content and also of technologies that are supported for the real exchange of the data. And this domain of dynamic traffic and travel management, parking, and refueling, recharging data is all added to the DATEX standard. But it makes it harder to use. And what we did is we created the concept of profiles, reference profiles. So in order to create a harmonized, interoperable data transfer in Europe, we've supporting that with reference profiles, and we focused on 2 different aspects of them. First, we have the delegated regulations stipulating a lot of data categories in which DATEX has to support the data category with a profile. And on top of that, we have services identified. And these services have been developed by the EU EIP platform, which is a cooperation of the road operators in Europe. And they have a harmonized approach in traffic management. And what we did is we created the profiles, the recommended service profiles that support these traffic management operations. On top of that, we have the safety-related traffic information, and the big step has been made there as well with the provision of a recommended reference profile for the data categories, which was also the basis of the real implemented service profile for the data for road safety in Europe. So we've created this environment of the so-called reference profiles, and have a big support environment with the web tool where you can add your own information elements to the profile, make it more complete, that it fits better to your specific implementation, but at least that we have a coherent, interoperable kernel of information elements that are used in Europe.
Thank you, Bart. Clear explanation. You mentioned the EU EIP, and I would like to pose a question to Roberto Arditi, who is the project manager of the EU EIP and scientific coordinator of SINA. Roberto, welcome to this webinar, and thank you for being here today. As Bart mentioned, we closely cooperated with the EU EIP in developing the recommended service profiles for the ITS service deployment guidelines. Now, Roberto, how do these recommended service profiles fit in with the objectives of the EU EIP?
Good morning, Marjolein. Good morning to everybody who is connected. First, I wish to thank you for the invitation. I'm highly honored to be here, and I wish to congratulate you, Bart, Cerema, and all the dream team who organized this event that seems to be fantastic in my perspective. To answer your question, DATEX is a key instrument for real-time communication and cooperation among operators in view of real-time traffic management towards a safer and greener road transport. Safety was strongly stressed by Bart before. This is a the connection between a traffic control center is a very critical and very important tool for data exchange between road operators, because this is needed for traffic management. The traffic management is really a topic of public interest, being connected with safety of the transport, with efficiency. And a direct contact between operators is not necessarily passing through the NAPs. That is also an important priority, but is second priority in view of the real-time populating info of the digital layer contribution to the data strategies. This is the reason why this information, this profile mentioned are integrated in the handbook that was recently presented in a webinar. An additional DATEX activity of interest is the management of electronic transport regulation, meter, an activity that enhances the support of data, of the exchange of information needed, for instance, for SICAM and others.
And Roberto, this good collaboration that we have now, how do you think we can strengthen it in the future?
Well, listen, the European ITS platform will be active in 2021, and then we look forward to continue this kind of cooperation in the frame that we have today, and we will cooperate also in view of the possible with DATEX Stakeholder, in the view of the forthcoming PSA that was announced by the Commission in several fora, and it will have important, including important subject and stakeholders concerning the DATEX itself.
Thank you very much, Roberto. I really look forward to continuing our cooperation, and I hope to see you in real life quite soon. In today's last session, which is led by Jozef Kaltwasser and Tobias Vries, you will hear more about the relationship between DATEX II, the delegated regulations, and the recommended reference profiles. Now, another important element under the header of information exchange is the use of DATEX II standardized SRTI messages. The joint TISA DATEX II C-Roads working group updated the SRTI profile, which contains all relevant safety-related road events as reported by the European NRAs. One of the partners of this joint working group is TISA. The president of TISA, Mr. Thomas Kuschek-Nesevich, is with us today. Welcome, Thomas. I always wonder if I pronounce your last name correctly. Thank you for joining us today. The joint working group is an example of a cooperation among organizations between service providers and road operators. As TISA president, what is your view on the relevance of the cooperation between service providers and road operators, especially in the field of safety?
Well, good morning, everybody. And first I have to apologize because we have some forest works here in the neighborhood, and I don't know whether it's too noisy so that you can hear me well. I hope so. At the very first time, I want to congratulate the DATEX II community to such a great outcome of your hard work. Your most obvious success is DATEX II to be the only technology mentioned in the ITS directive of the EU. But there's still a lot of work to be done because safety relevant information are largely available in finest quality. That creates permanently new demands and expectations on the user's side. From my point of view, both DATEX II community and TISA can do a great job by developing more compatible applications to display valuable content in end-user devices. That's what we want to achieve in our common SRTI working group. This is a very interesting group led by our dear friend Bart de Vries. Hello to you. For example, the outcome is, I have to take a list, that we put on the list of messages for being available in end-user devices. For example, vehicle on fire, rescue and recovery, snowplows in action, accident involving bus and accident involving lorry. This is very important stuff for the driver, for the user. And this needs a lot of common efforts of public authorities and the industry and any stakeholder in that field that has to be developed further.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for some very concrete proposals to strengthen our cooperation and continue our cooperation as well. So thank you for your support so far, and I hope to see you in Paris at the forum. Bart, you were actively involved in this joint working group. Can you share your experiences with us and also tell us how the results were taken up by the other stakeholders in the ITS value chain?
Yeah, it's good to see that this safety-related stuff is really a concern of everyone in the ITS domain. And the will to collaborate there and to harmonize things is eminent. People are willing to manage this part. They want to overcome all the business constraints and the processes that are in place. The money is involved for some, but there's a big will to solve this jointly because safety is in the benefit of all of us. And for that particular reason, I'm really happy to see that the joint working group has grown the last 2 years. We've got the involvement of the Data for Road Safety community, formerly known as the Data Task Force, where the vehicle manufacturers, the OEMs, enter the arena with as a data source. The vehicle is delivering data, and also the car-to-car consortium with the C-Roads and the CITS initiatives are collaborating there. So the SRTI joint working group has produced something that is much more covering the entire ITS arena in terms of standards and how to use them and how the interoperability between them is safeguarded. And one last important thing is that we expect that with the emergence of the vehicle as a source, we get new types of safety-related data. So there is still more work to do. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and well, as we have some newcomers, we thought it was good to ask them why from their perspective, it is valuable to participate in such a joint working group. And we've asked Hilde Oostveen, a very typical Dutch name, but she's representing the Data for Road Safety group. And she's portfolio manager at the National Road Traffic Data Portal in the Netherlands, formerly known as the National Data Warehouse. And she's involved in the Data for Road Safety community. And Hilde, I would like to ask you the following question. Can you explain why adaptation of DATEX II is contributing to the aims of the Data for Road Safety ecosystem?
Yes, Bart, of course I can. For the Data for Road Safety ecosystem, it's important to support a standard that can be used in a scalable solution where any industry partner in the transportation, mobility, and traffic data domain, and also the public authorities can join. And these partners need to be able to easily start to exchange safety-related traffic data. And yeah, DATEX II is already a well-known standard in the traffic domain. In the proof of concept phase, it has proven that DATEX II can contribute to these aims, and we made it possible to work together with OEMs, service providers, and road authorities. And by using DATEX II, it makes it possible for more partners to enter into this ecosystem for road safety, because most of them are already familiar with DATEX II. And by using DATEX II, we are also complying with the European Delegated Regulation for Safety-Related Traffic Information, also known as SRTI, which is also a really good thing.
Yeah, which makes it really clear that there's a good reason to join the DATEX II boat and the joint SRTI working group in particular. Can you explain what the next steps for the Data for Road Safety group are going to be?
Yes, I can. Yeah, recently the proof of concept phase, as you might know, ended. It's now possible for everyone to join the Data for Road Safety community by signing a multi-party agreement, which makes it possible to share and receive more and more safety-related data. And so we will continue with the successful usage of DATEX II. And two of the key principles within this ecosystem are actually to share the data free of charge and share it on the basis of reciprocity. And yeah, hopefully this ecosystem will grow further and further, and this will contribute to improve road safety.
Very good. That's a very promising development. Thanks for your contribution, Hilde. Very clear.
You're welcome, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then I would like to come to the second main element of the Declaration of Utrecht, which is related to the DATEX II stakeholders. It calls upon the DATEX II organization to strengthen and expand the stakeholder community and to cooperate and align with the adjacent information and technology domains. Under this heading, DATEX II as an enabler of CITS was mentioned as well. At the European ITS Congress in June 2019 in Eindhoven, C-Roads and DATEX II signed a collaboration agreement. We agreed to collaborate in the development and deployment of interoperable CITS services and to align profiles and standards. Bart, you are involved in follow-up of this collaboration agreement. What is the work that's going on now?
Yeah, well, the narrow relationship between CITS services and DATEX II has been identified already a few years ago. And because of that, we have a CITS alignment and harmonization activity in our program. But we felt that that needed to be strengthened by a real collaboration agreement to some extent with the C-Roads community. And why is this relevant? Because what we see is that with the CITS technology, new way of data collection, data provision, and data distribution is created. And that offers a wide range of new opportunities of improved services and new services to the road user and from the road user to the traffic management services. And it has to fit together with the existing ecosystem. And that's a challenge that we have to solve together. And so I'm very pleased that we have Martin Beum, the General Secretary of the C-Roads platform. And we know Martin with a lot of different hats, and he has a similar hat because of that as I have. And Martin, so happy to have you. And I would like to ask you how we will contribute with this collaboration to a neat integration of the CITS services in the wider range of traffic information and traffic management services that we already have in place.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. What we see is that DATEX II, especially also from the history, is very much looking on the back end. Yeah, and with CITS, as you have well explained, Bart, we are looking on the service layer, on the service interface, the data and information exchange between the infrastructure on the one side and the cars on the other side. And lucky us, within the C-Roads platform, which is driven by public authorities, in total we have 18 European member states and their road operators. We are already very much using DATEX II, also of course underlined with the delegated regulations. So DATEX II, that's our basic element that's in the back-end systems. And in parallel, when speaking about CITS services, we are collaborating with the Car-to-Car Communications Consortium a lot. We are looking on the exchange and the specifications of the interfaces on data and information exchange, which will not be DATEX II. These are standards like DEN or EVI and so on. So here we are looking on the front end. And for road operators and authorities, it's very important to have a good translation from the internal services to the external services. So in fact, this collaboration between DatexII and C-Roads, we are very much looking on the translation issues between DatexII and the CIS specifications. And of course, this translation needs to be bidirectional. So not only that our services go out to the cars, but we know that we have also probe vehicle data. So data coming from the vehicles sent back, also not in DatexII format, need to be translated to our internal language, which is DatexII. So here these translation issues are very, very important. And here the strong collaboration between DatexII and C-Roads is really needed.
Yeah, I fully agree. That's for sure. And I do think that what you clearly explained, Martin, is that on the information layer, we're talking about the same thing. It's the technology and the data structures that give us the challenges. And do you see specific topics that we can address on the short term on this?
Yeah, on the short term, we already see today that we are very much looking, when speaking about CITS, about positioning. Those are for sure elements what we need to look deeper into. Yeah, when we are looking on SPATMAP, which is looking on traffic light information, then you need to know what vehicles you need to inform. So you need to have a very well positioning part in your messages. That's for sure an element. I know that DatexII, for example, is also very much looking currently on parking. And CITS, we have started along motorways, but we are now continuing within cities, within urban areas. We're coming more and more to urban use cases. Here we for sure can learn also from DatexII what does parking information contain, what is the information that can be transmitted to the vehicles for direct information. So for sure, there are services which are popping up, where here the expertise is on the one hand more on the DatexII side, on the other hand more on the OEM side, and within the C-Roads platform we are more an intermediate, translating between vehicles and the infrastructure. It's an infrastructure perspective, of course, yeah. So we will not provide messages where we have no knowledge about. We are speaking about those messages that can support on the infrastructure side. And here you have expertise, we are bringing in expertise from the OEMs, and we need to mix those together to find the right message types and the right specifications on both sides, on the interface of the services, but also on the interfaces to our internal services, to our backend systems.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I couldn't have expressed it better. The emphasis you put on collaboration in order to make ITS deliver to its full potential is crucial. Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome.
Okay, thanks, Martin. We move from C-Roads to another important stakeholder in the adjacent technological domain, which is TNITS. There is no sharp distinction anymore between static and dynamic traffic information. We see that DatexII and TNITS are providing and using standards addressing the same events. Consequently, the challenge arises how we can guarantee a smooth exchange of information between our standards. DatexII and TNITS have taken up this challenge of interoperability of standards in the traffic management domain, and we started with a workshop a year ago, and from there on we moved on together. Bart, what can you tell us about this cooperation?
Yeah, well, what you already explained is that traditionally we were a bit more distinct from each other. Mm-hmm. We had the map provision and we had the dynamic traffic information and traffic management measure domain. But as technology is enabling more rapid updates on over-the-air transmission of map updates and stuff like that, the TNITS scope, or the scope of the map domain is extending to the more dynamic part. And the dynamic part is looking at the more static part, or the semi-static part, because for some of the features that we use in traffic management, we need to define semi-static objects. And these objects, they should be in a map, for example. If we talk about VMSs or dynamic signage and stuff like that, that is really affecting the behavior of the traveler, that needs to be implemented in the navigation algorithms as well. And we've identified jointly with the TNITS people that that this growing towards each other requires management of the overlapping concepts. And therefore we concluded that we have to collaborate on that. And I'm really happy to see that that we have Christian Kleine in our panel. Christian is president of the TNITS. I never am sure whether it's the platform or the TNITS community as a whole. Christian.
Association, I would say.
Even better. Very good. And but your paycheck is paid by here, where you are a manager of data sourcing, and already responsible for data exchange with public authorities for over 16 years, which makes you, well, just above junior, I would say. But kidding, of course. But very good to have you, Christian. And I would like to ask you, can you elaborate a bit on which elements of the TNITS roadmap for the near future should be taken up together with the DatexII community? Because of what reasons?
Yes, of course. And thanks a lot, Bart, and also Marjolein for inviting me to this event, and also good morning, everybody. As you already explained nicely, Bart, I think we need to differentiate that we have, in general, those two layers. We have the map and also the dynamic layer, and this is totally clear. And then also the dynamic layer is mostly served by DATEX, and TNITS is responsible for map updates. And I think we need to create interoperability and harmonization exactly where those two worlds come together. And for example, as you asked for what type of features I see, I think there's a lot. So for example, in the parking domain, we have parking spaces located on a map, and then we have capacity of parking as a dynamic element, and also dynamic speed limits, or which is now an emerging topic, is those dynamic low emission zones, where we have the polygon also located on a map. But the dynamic information is coming via DATEX, and all those DATEX messages needs to be located on the base layer map, and for this we need a better understanding of those two standards. And and for this I think we really should follow up on our last year started collaboration, and due to all the reasons that we cannot meet in person, we could not really follow up. But I think we now should really go more into detail and then define features where also you see we are overlapping, and build a harmonized approach so that both standards really understand each other's.
Yeah, I think so too. And on top of that, I think what you already described, we are coming from different domains, but we are growing towards each other. And I think one of our challenges is as well, or our key points of attention for the near future is create a joint view on how services are going to be served by which type of standard and,
Yeah.
and how they interact. Can you, what's your view on that?
Yeah, yes, yeah, I think you're totally right. So we need to really to develop this common view, and then also make clear maybe for data provider which elements are used by which standard. So because I think there's also a little bit confusion, and yeah, to create a better understanding of those two types of layers, because I think they will also remain like this. So we will always have this we call it core map or base layer map, which is really describing the physical elements. And so yeah, as I said, I think we also need to make clear towards data providers, suppliers, what type of data and features are served by which standard.
Yeah, I think so too. That's a clear statement that will help both the data providers and also the data consumers what they can expect where and for what type of service, end user service or technical service the standards are suitable. Fortunately, we will start real collaboration a bit with a bit stimulation of the next PSA call, where we will be jointly in a technical stream. And I'm really looking forward to pick up this challenge. So thank you very much.
Yes, me too. We are working on this. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Christian. We now have tackled the first two subjects of the Declaration of Utrecht, the information exchange and the stakeholders, and the last one is user support. Our organization offers a splendid user support. Take a look at our website, on which you will find an extensive section on support at different levels. For the basic user, using standard case-driven profiles. For the more experienced user, and finally also for the expert user that is able to assemble its own profiles. You will also find tooling that will help you make DATEX II version 3 schemas, and of course the DATEX II Reference and Validation Center that allows you to check your DATEX II profiles against specified validation rules. And we also offer support for specific user groups. Bart, can you tell us a bit more about the support that we are offering to those specific user groups?
Yes, we are doing two things. We are developing standards, and we are delivering the support as we are a support action. So it's not only about technical standard development. We have the support, and we've split that. We have the DATEX II Academy, providing a lot of user support for the different levels you just explained. And we have an advice and validation center. This is not a very large center with a lot of, because you can spend a lot of resources in it, but we don't have them for that. But at least it gives you a start, and it gives you a direction whether you are on the right track, and forward your information to local experts in Europe. And that brings me to the one of the major features of the DATEX II community is that we have a widespread community of experts that are involved in this academy and in RAF Center, also available for national deployment support, of course, which is on a bilateral basis, but at least we can guide most people into this direction. We will focus, that's not ready yet, but we will create more use case oriented entries in our support. And so if you are coming from the parking and you have to, you are looking for, I will have to implement my parking data or my charging info data, you will get an easy entry to the things that are relevant for you, because DATEX II is so wide and so overwhelming. That's an asset, but it's also a constraint for us, because we are managing a wide and growing ecosystem of standards, and we need to help the people using it better. And that's work in progress, which you will see on our website the next couple of months delivered. But we are also doing something else: user support. DATEX II was traditionally road operator owned and managed, but with the parking domain and with the charging and refueling domains in our scope now as well, we've identified that we will have to involve the communities better in the development of our standards. So that's also, for that reason, it's very interesting to tell that we've started a collaboration with the Alliance for Parking Data Standards in Europe to get the parking industry, both the private and public parking associations, involved in adopting their requirements and their primary process requirements with regard to the data that has to be covered by DATEX II in our standard, instead of our own bit more traditional formed Part 6 parking data. And the same kind of alliance we are looking for with the charging domain. And bringing in the users in the user requirements into the DATEX standard, that helps us creating a standard that's really useful. And that's our aim.
That's clear. Thank you, Bart. Now we have outlined what has become of the Declaration of Utrecht and how we are working with the outcomes. But this presentation would not be complete without mentioning one of the really big achievements, DATEX II version 3. Version 3 was launched 2 years ago and is now version 3.1. It contains road traffic data and VMS publications, and also the parts on TMPs and traffic light settings have become available. Within the next half year, energy publications containing recharging and refueling infrastructure and its real-time availability will become available, as well as the first version of the traffic regulations publication. Now, Bart, what I just said in a few sentences is the results of years and years of hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be a bit strange if I would deny that. Eh? Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's, yes, we've done a lot of work, and we did even more than we expected in the beginning of this call. And that has a very good reason. With the version 3 methodology and the toolbox that we created to maintain and develop the standards, we've created something so powerful that people got more and more enthusiastic about, oh, but if that's possible now, then it would be good that we do meter. 5 years ago, nobody was thinking about digitizing or digitalizing traffic regulations. Dynamic lane management is something that is in the back of our heads. And so the potential is big, and we see that the uptake of this version 3 is really good because of this potential. And we as DATEX II organization have one big challenge, and that's our key focal point for the next decade, I think, and that's that we keep a coherent set of standards, and that it is usable and coherent with all the domains. And this is especially relevant because we see that we got a wider spread of user communities that are going to use DATEX standard. So the interoperability requirement and the real plug and play capabilities of the application of the standard become more and more relevant. And for that reason, I'm really happy that we have Stephanie Leonard with us. She's head of innovation and technology at TomTom. And Stephanie, welcome to the DATEX II webinar. And I would like to give you a question. We've talked a lot about traffic information provision, but one of the really fast-growing the rapidly evolving developments in our domain is the collaborative traffic management, where the private industry is providing real traffic management services that are addressing and reaching the end user. And that could be human, but that could also be an automated vehicle. And it is maybe one of the most promising successes for ITS development in the next couple of years. And this brings the traditional role of the navigation service providers in a different way of behaving, because you're taking responsibility for the travel behavior of a certain amount of travelers. So you will actively contribute to the public interest in using and optimizing the road network. And I would like to ask you, in this sense, why actors in this collaborative traffic management domain that are expecting the full merit of the concept of collaborative traffic management should commit themselves to a joint set of standards in general and in DATEX II in particular.
Yep, so good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marjolein and Bart. And firstly, thank you for the invitation. I'm very sad that we have to do this online, because normally the DATEX II forum is one of the highlights of the year. I've always enjoyed going to Utrecht and having the very interactive, somewhat TV show-like setting for the DATEX forum. So I'm definitely missing that. But it's very nice to see that you've mobilized the community online in any sense, and I wouldn't have expected anything less. So really, to go to your question, I mean, for a service provider like TomTom, we need to operate and scale our services within a given market, right? So we don't want to deploy services we can only operate in a region or in a country. They need to be covering a whole market. And for us, the European Union is an entire market. So, you know, standards like DATEX are important for the scalability. It allows us to invest in services that we know we can actually do cross-border, which is very important for the driver. You know, the driver, if they want to drive from one end of Europe to the other, they want that service to be able to continue at the same level and the same quality. So for us, standards are absolutely essential in that operation. So that's one of the reasons why we're very committed to this. The second element of commitment, though, for us is making sure you take the responsibility to use the latest version of a standard which is available to you. You know, you've mentioned, you know, this morning that there are, you know, kind of this latest version of DATEX, and it's important that we all adopt that at a similar time, because if we're all using different versions of DATEX, we're not actually achieving true interoperability, which is actually what's required. So TomTom made a decision last year to migrate to the latest version of DATEX, which we're in the final stages of doing. I hope we have that ready before Christmas. So that's the commitment from our side. We know that we're responsible, that we need to put the investment and the resources necessary to make sure that we're always using the latest version. But the commitment, of course, has a legal background as well. I think a lot of other speakers have mentioned that there are various legal obligations to use DATEX II. So as a service provider, we also take that very seriously. So if it's in the law, it's in the law. But I think regardless, even if DATEX II hadn't been made as a legal obligation, we still would have made the decision to use it anyhow. But still, we have the legal obligations that we have to meet. And last but not least, one point that I also want to highlight is that in this new kind of domain of connected, cooperative, and automated mobility, there is going to be an ecosystem of standards. I think the previous speakers have also kind of alluded to this. There will not be one single standard for CCAM. There will be an ecosystem, you know, and we have to think moving forward, how can we strengthen that collaboration and make sure that the ecosystem works and operates, you know, nicely. DATEX II is very important for the kind of, you know, road operator, road management aspect, but TPEG, for example, is also very important for that delivery of traffic information to the car. Sensoris is important for that car to cloud infrastructure communication. So we have an ecosystem of standards, and we need to make sure that they all fit nicely together, which I'm confident with the community we have in the ITS, that should be feasible.
Yeah, well, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, your message about scope and unity in the union is a very relevant one, I think. And maybe that's I would like to take that as the key message, that adopting a standard is also enabling you to use the services that are available by the large service providers. And if you don't do that, the chances are very limited as a road operator or as a data provider anyway, that the TomToms of this world will adopt your information in their ecosystem. And on top of that, Stephanie, do you see? You mentioned also the ecosystem of standards for CCAM. Do you see a particular governance of that, or do you think that is going to be a natural collaboration between actors?
I think that there will, I don't know if natural collaboration will be enough to manage it practically. I think that, you know, the ITS community is very well governed and very well connected. You know, even if to an outsider that comes into ITS for the first time, it might seem, you know, quite overwhelming with the sheer amount of standards we have for the different components. But the community, of course, is quite well knit. I'm not too worried about that. But, you know, moving forward, do we need a governance structure? It might be worth investigating further how far we need something. Then, of course, opens the question, who would be that kind of governance, who would operate that governance structure? But I think it's definitely something worth considering if we need to look into, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephanie, for this clear intervention and very positive intervention. Well, hopefully we are able to organize our next forum in Paris, and then I hope to see you in real life. You already mentioned the governance, which brings me to the next part of the presentation. As you know, DATEX II is co-funded by the European Commission as a program support action in the CEF program. And the PSA runs originally until the end of 2020, and it will be extended until the end of June 2021. In the meantime, the call for a PSA to establish a coordination mechanism to federate the national access points can be published any day now. DATEX II would be one of the working streams in this coordination mechanism, and this will guarantee the continuity of support, maintenance, and further development of DATEX II in the next years, and of course also the harmonization and alignment the organization are very much in favor of. As the scope of DATEX II is wider than the scope of the platform on national access points, we will await the call to see what is the best way to cooperate, to harmonize, and align with other standards, and to continue to support the maintenance and further development of DATEX II in the next years. So as I said, the call can be published any day now, and in one of the other webinars in this series, most probably the March webinar, we will inform you about DATEX II after June 2021. I'm reaching the end of our presentation, and I would like to inform you about one change in today's program. Today's last session on how DATEX II can support different service types will be shifted to a later webinar, which gives a bit more time for a session called Deployment of DATEX II in your data provision, which is about the relationship between DATEX II, the delegated regulations, and the recommended reference profiles, as I already mentioned in the beginning of my presentation. Now it's time for a short break, and after the break at 10:45, Bart will explain why DATEX II is a strategic choice. So thank you all for listening. Stay tuned, stay healthy, and enjoy our webinar.